Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep. Welcome to the big news of the day. The 3rd of December marks a tragic day for India because on this day, nearly 4 decades ago, India was hit by the world's worst industrial disaster. On the intervening nights of the 2nd and 3rd December 1984, a pesticide plant owned by the Union Carbide Corporation located in the city of Bhopal leaked a toxic gas known as methyl isocyanate, which led to the instant death of thousands of people in the city of Bhopal. It triggered a mass evacuation of thousands of people, and as this deadly toxic gas hovered over the city, thousands more died on this horrific day, with several people injured and nearly 500,000 survivors reporting long term damages to their respiratory system, to their eyes, etc. And many victims even today bear the burden of this disaster. According to government estimates, around 15 to 20,000 people have died as a direct result of this disaster, and hence it is considered as one of the world's major industrial accidents of the 20th century and one of the worst industrial disasters that we have witnessed. In fact, a report that was released by the International Labour Organization has pointed out that nearly 6 lakh people were affected because of this tragedy. And in its report, it has placed the Bhopal gas tragedy on the same lines of Chernobyl disaster, the Fukushima disaster, and the others, which happen to be the world's major industrial accidents after 1919. This disaster not just left behind a devastating impact on those 2 days, but it also left behind a long-lasting impact as the toxic material remained in the environment and leached into the soil and the water. And many of the victims who had managed to survive after getting exposed to the deadly toxic gas, they suffered from long-term health consequences, which till date affects their respiration, functioning of internal organs, and their immune systems. Studies conducted by various activist groups have shown that the survivors, they still suffer from adverse conditions such as cancer, tumors, lung and respiratory related problems caused by the direct inhalation of this toxic gas. But the real irony is that the victims of this disaster were made to suffer another tragedy, as the accountability for this disaster was never truly fixed, and justice has not only been delayed, it has even been denied by India's legal and judicial system. See, within days of this tragedy, the chairman of this company, Warren Anderson, who headed Union Carbide's parent organization in the US, visited India and he was immediately arrested on his arrival. Warren Anderson and other top executives of the company were even held under house arrest, as the tragedy clearly involved an angle of corporate negligence. But within few days, Warren Anderson was allowed to leave India without facing trial, and he would never return to the country. And it has been alleged that the then Rajiv Gandhi government was pressurized by the US to release Warren Anderson, thus permanently denying justice to the victims. The victims of this tragedy have had a long wait for justice, but without getting bogged down, they have continued the legal fight for fixing accountability for this disaster and also to seek their rightful compensation. Indian courts declared Warren Anderson as a fugitive and non bailable warrants were issued against him, but Warren Anderson was never extradited back to India and he eventually died in 2014 in the US. Eventually, the victims of the disaster had to be compensated by the Indian government, but this compensation was inadequate, and hence the victims and their families they still continue this fight seeking more compensation and seeking to fix accountability for this disaster. In 2010, after multiple review petitions, a Bhopal court convicted few senior executives of Union Carbide, but they were delivered only 2 years imprisonment. Most experts agree that there has been a lack of compensation and rehabilitation for the victims, and the company was never held accountable for the environmental damage that had been caused. So activists and critics feel that this is a toxic insult to the devastated communities of Bhopal, which bore the full impact of this tragedy. But the valiant victims and their families have continued their legal battle, and they have even taken this legal fight to the United States. The victims have withstood the long fight for justice, and they secured the Bhopal Act, which allowed the Indian state, that is the government of India, to function as parens patriae, which essentially allows the Indian state to act as the legal protector of its citizens who are unable to protect themselves, and also represent itself as a sovereign plaintiff in the legal suit that was filed in New York seeking $3 billion in compensation from the parent organization of Union Carbide. This sum was sought not just to compensate the victims who truly deserved it, but also to pay for the damages caused to the environment. This litigation went on for several years before it was settled prematurely, and following the intervention of the Supreme Court of India, the compensation was settled for just $470 million. However, in 1991, the Supreme Court did revoke the criminal immunity which had been accorded to the company and its executives. This subjected the company's executives to criminal proceedings, but the punishment delivered eventually has been completely inadequate to the scale of the disaster, and activists and experts feel that natural justice was denied to the victims, and the Indian state had a big role to play in this failure. This tragedy pushed India to take a relook at the need for liability law for such industrial disasters and to strengthen the legal framework with regard to corporate negligence and also to consider aspects of international law. This tragedy led to few legal interventions, such as the Environment Protection Act of 1986, which was directly inspired by the Bhopal gas tragedy. This introduced the concept of polluter pays so that the industry responsible for the pollution would be held accountable and will be liable for paying compensation for any environmental pollution caused. Then in 1991, the Public Liability Insurance Act was enacted. It has been later amended as well to ensure that adequate compensation is paid to the victims of any industrial tragedy by ensuring that the responsible company pays for this compensation. But critics point out that these legal provisions are still not enough, and hence there is a continued demand to revisit India's liability laws with regard to how industrial disasters and corporate negligence is treated. So with this, I would like to conclude my discussion. And if you like the initiative, do support us by liking the video, share your comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.